Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am your host. And joining me today is a good friend of the show, Mr. Nick Kendell, who contributes for Mile High Huddle, covering both the draft and, of course, the Denver Broncos. Nick, thanks for taking the time to join me, man. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. I already complained about the heat to you too a little bit, but getting really excited for Broncos training camp, kind of getting started here, and jam-packed August. I know you and I don't think see eye to eye on the outdoor activities as much, but I got 3 backpacking trips, doing the east side of the Wonderland Trail, which is about a 20-mile day hike. So excited for August.
Yeah, I'm not a super avid mountain person. I will go like from time to time, especially to escape the heat, like we have
Yeah.
been. So it's just not something I actively seek out, but I enjoy it when I do go. But the bugs and all that stuff, it gets it can get you a little bit.
Yeah, it can, but I'm from the Midwest. The mosquitoes are worse there, and also the ticks. So I'll take the
Yeah,
Pacific Northwest bugs over that any day.
absolutely, absolutely. So really excited to have Nick on tonight, of course, to talk about the Denver Broncos, everything that's been happening in the offseason, what he's kind of looking forward to in training camp, and of course, some AFC West hierarchy talk. So should be a good conversation. We'll do this, of course, with some of our friends from Raider Nation as well as Chiefs Kingdom. So it should be a fun couple of weeks there as we get started here. So, Nick, first things first, I think obviously the big domino that started the whole crazy offseason, of course, is the trade for Russell Wilson, the quarterback, Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris heading to Seattle. So I guess my first question, obviously you've had a lot of time to simmer on that move, on the hiring of Nathaniel Hackett. I think from an outside perspective, I am super curious to see how Wilson and Hackett will be able to kind of, meld their brains together, if you will, how that relationship is going to be between the quarterback and the play caller. What have you guys been hearing, and what's your expectation there for how Hackett will kind of adjust to Russ and Russ to Hackett?
It does. They keep saying that it's a lot of cliche stuff, but they're going to meld both of their concepts together, what they like to do. And me, probably just being the scientist I am, always a little bit skeptical. Maybe that's also going through the last 6 years of watching the Broncos. Oh yeah, we look great again. We're back to being contenders. Okay, we'll see. But definitely excited to see what it looks like, and excited to see what kind of solutions Hackett can bring to Russell Wilson. That started to be some issues for him recently in his career. It's always been an issue, the short middle of the field pass game, but very reliant on the explosive pass play. But haven't really seen so much of the outside zone RPO centric game with Russell Wilson. I'm curious if the quick pass, the speed outs and whatnot can somewhat help Russell Wilson. And one thing Denver is going to have going is a very good running back duo. If you can't work that quick pass game, a la the quick short pass game, a la Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning, you need a strong run game to get teams to kind of not live into that too high safety shell world, so that we can get those more likely explosive plays down the field. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams should allow Denver to do that somewhat. We'll see how the offensive line comes together, but feel pretty good about it overall. Just so many question marks, and right now, it's all not to be put on my. Let me take off my scientist hat and put on my lawyer hat. A lot of hearsay right now. I want to see what it all looks
Yeah.
like before getting too hyped about what it actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's totally fair. I'm glad you touched on, the running back situation there, because I think that is important, playing to Russell's strengths and
Mhm.
weaknesses. I guess the follow up question there is, how concerned are you about, and how concerned are Broncos fans about 2021 kind of being who Russ is going to be going forward, or was that just kind of an aberration, 1 year sample size, not healthy? How confident are you guys that he will be able to kind of recapture the 2020 magic when he was an MVP candidate for the first 10 weeks of the season?
Man, it's pretty hard to say for Russell Wilson right now. And part of that, being an MVP candidate is the old guard has kind of started to diminish. And there's some new young quarterbacks, which you probably know a thing or two about that. While Russell Wilson is still going to be
Very
pretty
true.
darn good, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and Josh Allen, and for even further, Patrick Mahomes have really, and Lamar Jackson, really established themselves as some incredible, fun young quarterbacks. So I think Russell Wilson's still going to be good. Is he going to be a top 5 quarterback this season? That's the difference between an AFC West contender Broncos and a playoff wildcard contender Broncos. But I definitely think he'll finish off in the top 10 this year. I would say for the most part, Broncos fans are totally, there's no way everybody's sleeping on Russell Wilson. They're just haters. He's going to become a top 5 quarterback again.
Right.
But after having been sold the cup of you know what, that was, Joe Flacco's entering his prime. Case Keenum's a franchise quarterback. Trevor Simeon's got the arm of the gods. Drew Lock, whatever. I don't really care. I mean, I keep hearkening it back to the Bengals as well. Last year, getting into the playoffs and getting hot and going all the way to the Super Bowl. You have a ticket to the dance when you have a franchise quarterback, and the Broncos, all they have to do, get in, and single elimination tournament, anything can happen. So they actually have a chance now. There is a reason for legitimate belief in this team when you have a quarterback of Russell Wilson's quality.
Yeah, absolutely. That's totally fair. I mean, you're talking about even if Russell Wilson is a top 10 to 12 guy, a massive improvement over what, you guys are dealing with, of course, with Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock over the past few years. And the Joe Flacco thing, I forgot about that for a hot second. Entering his prime comment from John Elway there was fun. All right, you mentioned the offensive line. Of course, everybody who listens to the show knows I'm a big trench guy. And I'm so curious about this group because for the most part, all of these players who are drafted into the situation, signed into the situation, they're drafted to play a gap and power scheme of recent years, outside of course Billy Turner, the recent addition. Nathaniel Hackett reportedly wants to do a lot of the outside zone scheme stuff. Where are you at with the combination of offensive line players and the coaching scheme kind of adapting to their skill sets and vice versa?
Garrett Bowles and Dalton Reisner were both drafted for outside zone centric schemes when they did come to the Broncos. So those are two guys to keep an eye on. I would say that Dalton Reisner's best year of his career was his rookie year when the Broncos were working that outside zone under former offensive coordinator Rich Scangarello, who is now with the Kentucky Wildcats. So definitely some guys you could think that should, in theory, be able to work, and especially Garrett Bowles. He's a little bit smaller for the left tackle position, but he's an athlete. He can move in space, so should be better there. Big question there for the offensive line, though, is how good can they be? Because I think the offensive line probably does need to push that top 10 to top 12 unit to make sure this offense can be what it needs to be for Russell Wilson and whatnot, to make sure that teams are playing more cover 1, cover 3, getting guys in the box to seek those explosive plays outside the hash mark. So as many question marks as there are on this Broncos offensive line, outside of right tackle, which, hello, everybody, get in line.
Right in the
AFC
division,
West.
man.
Unbelievable how bad the right tackle position is in this division. But other than that, I think this Broncos offensive line, while I don't think they have the highest ceiling, I think they have a really high floor because they have a bevy of options that these guys, this guy's pretty competent. Oh, this guy's pretty good. You got Nathaniel Moody, who's been flashing in camp. A lot of people thought he was a top 50 talent if it wasn't for the injuries. Quinn Miners flashed in crazy last season, kind of the Senior Bowl standout. Lloyd Cushenberry went from bottom 3 to bottom 10 last year. Maybe should be at least a little bit better. Offer some competency. You're not paying him a lot. And just some solidness at Garrett Bowles there at left tackle. Big question is right tackle. How does it all look together? We're going to find out. Either way, I think the offensive line will be better because you have Russell Wilson there. It's a double-edged sword because, he can be greedy in the pocket, looking out those big explosive plays, looking to hold on. Sometimes that can lead to sacks or putting the ball in harm's way, but you live with it, hunt those big plays. But offensive line, again, this Broncos team in general, I think, has a really massive air bar for what the ceiling and the floor can be this year. Offensive line's a little bit different. I don't think the margin is that big. I think you're going to be pretty average as long as Garrett Bowles does not go down.
There you go. Former Utah Ute, my guy, along with Tim Patrick, of course, good lead in there with the receiving group. I guess the biggest question mark is I have a lot of confidence that Courtland Sutton will be able to kind of adapt to, DK Metcalf role and be that kind of lead guy. How do you see the second target kind of working out for Russell Wilson? Tim Patrick has been pretty consistent, arguably the most consistent player outside of Sutton last year. Jerry Jeudy, of course, ultra talented. KJ Hamler, very talented, hasn't really been able to stay healthy. Who do you think kind of emerges from that group as to be Russell's second target?
Man, it says total cop-out, but I think Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy are going to be similar as far as impact. I would say Jerry Jeudy probably gets a higher volume of touches, but I would imagine Tim Patrick gets more impactful touches just where these guys are going to be working. My biggest question mark with this wide receiver room is where these guys are going to line on the field, because in this wide zone scheme, which we're seeing with Sean McVay, which we've seen with Nathaniel Hackett, that slot is almost like a Z tight end, so to speak, where there is a lot of blocking emphasis on that guy. People see Cooper Kupp and they think, oh, Wes Welker, small little shifty guy. Cooper Kupp is like 6'2", 210, and out there like digging out linebackers. That's not Jerry Jeudy. So I'm really curious to see what the alignment and the usage of these wide receivers is going to be. Obviously, they're going to see a little bit of movement here and there. You also have two tight ends that are a little bit more of those move pieces, and Albert Okwuegbunam and the 80th overall draft pick
Well
of this
done.
last
Well
draft.
done.
I mean, gotta get it there, but and also Greg Dulcich as well. So it will be interesting. I don't think this unit has a superstar per se. Cortland Sutton maybe could emerge that way. Jerry Jeudy, I think he's a very good number 2 in a lot of offenses. I think I'd be more interested in to see him in more of a quick pass, Tom Brady style offense, but he's here and it is what it is. And I think he's going to have a great year. A lot of people burying him last year, but he suffered a high ankle sprain week 1 that really impacts a guy like Jerry Jeudy, given how much his quick twitch and separation matters for him. So as far as the second target, again, I want to see what it looks like, but I think it's really a coin flip between the likes of Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. So very curious to see there. I will say Tim Patrick, fantastic run blocker at Utah.
Yes.
So that should kind of be the expectation there, I guess. Shifting over to the defensive side of things, I think I always like to start with the pass rush. Of course, you're talking about a free agent acquisition in Randy Gregory, and then you draft Nick Bonito, who I was a big fan of. Was hoping the Chargers would be able to kind of scoop him up at some point. And still you have Bradley Chubb, although he hasn't necessarily been healthy. What are the expectations from the edge rusher group? Scheme kind of similar, very outside linebacker heavy group, but what are you expecting to see from that group?
I'm expecting to see more 5-man pressures this year, a little bit more of what we saw at the Rams last year versus the Broncos looking to send less guys with Vic Fangio. Was it Raheem Morris? They were at the Chargers there last year. They blitzed a good amount with 5 guys along the line of scrimmage, including the defensive line, kind of a 5-1-5 look pretty often there with the Rams. So I'm expecting to be a little bit more aggressive. Some of that is because the Broncos will, in theory, have a better offense. Let's take the in theory out of there. They'll have a better offense than they had last year with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. So they should have better opportunities to pin their ears back. Some situations where the opposing teams feel a little bit more pressured to be aggressive with the ball, with the 7-step dropbacks, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the opposite of the offensive line, in my opinion, where this is as boom or bust, feast or famine as it gets, because Bradley Chubb has been on again, off again in his career. He suffered 2 ACL injuries to date. Last year, he was going to try to play through an ankle injury, and he was not effective and a lot of pain. And he came back after a surgery and 0 sacks on the year. Not great. Apparently, he's been dominant in camp, but that's always one of those things. That's a zero-sum game because that means somebody on the offensive line is getting beat. Broncos have had injuries at right tackle, so I guess we'll find out once we have the combined practices and preseason games. But for now, does sound like there's a lot of excitement about Bradley Chubb this season. And Randy Gregory starting the year off on the PUP list. A little bit apprehensive on that, but excited about the depth of this unit as well. I mean, Randy Gregory, I don't know how much you've watched him in college or whatnot, but a lot of people thought, top 10, top 15 tools. Enjoyed the Mary Jane a little bit. That caused him to miss a fair amount of games. But really, really incredibly talented toolsy player. And the Broncos have a lot of pass rushing speed depth as the pass rushers as well. Baron Browning's officially moving to the edge full time after flashing a lot at the off-ball stack linebacker position last year. And I actually liked him at edge more coming out of Ohio State than at the linebacker spot. I thought he was better when didn't have to process and think as much, just be a freak athlete. I mean, he actually is bigger, faster, stronger testing-wise than Nick Bonito. So we'll be excited to see what he does this year. Nick Bonito, again, another finesse guy, I'm guessing going to be a designated pass rusher this season. And Jonathan Cooper looked to be a really good depth piece last year. So this room has a lot of depth. I would say that the edge setting ability is a big question mark for me because a lot of these guys are more of the speed, lighter, finesse players. Maybe not as much of an issue if you're trying to rush with 5 guys instead of 4 with the gap and a half versus 1 gap. But definitely a high ceiling if Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb can stay healthy, deliver. But if those 2 guys go out, it's just a bunch of question marks.
Any chance Browning plays kind of a hybrid role, or is it full edge 100% of the time?
I mean, it's going to be a hybrid role, so to speak, because I think they're going to drop those edge guys into coverage somewhat and do a lot of simulated pressures, which is, all the rage. Saw it a lot from Georgia this last year as well. But in that ability to do that, I mean, you guys just brought in Kyle Van Noy, he lines up an edge, but he's drops from edge as much as he rushes. So I think you could see some of that there, but closer to the line of scrimmage. And it's going to be, again, like I said, a lot of simulated pressures with their front, I believe, this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I will ask you one more player question here. and then
Okay.
we'll kind of get into your expectations on the season. But how good can Patrick Surtain get this season after having a full offseason in the NFL, in your opinion?
Man, it's hard with cornerback because I mean you follow the data I'm sure as well. Cornerback is one of the most volatile positions year to year because so much of it is dependent on health. And if Patrick Surtain, God knock on wood, suffers just a turf toe or a slight hamstring injury, his form dropping from 100% to 90% could drop him a lot on the field because there's just such a small margin
Right.
for error. It's one of the reasons that when you see a quarterback hit that like 30 years old, they can all be like go from awesome to, oh my gosh, get that guy off the field. Just the margins are so small.
Right.
That said, he's going to be 22 years old this year. I think they're going to play him a lot on island. I'm really curious to see what the alignment is with the cornerbacks, though, because while he's not Jalen Ramsey, although Jalen Ramsey, I think, has started to dip a bit as well. They used him a lot in the slot last year. So is Surtain going to be, island, one guy on the field and roll coverage on the other side? They're going to use him in the slot. We'll find out. But I think Surtain is an emerging superstar player. Like I said, only 22 years old. He looks so big out there too. I think it might be just because he's wearing that number 2. Just doesn't even look real
Yeah.
for the cornerback position. But man, he looks like a special talent. I don't like to get too ahead of myself. I don't really. My brand is not being the hype man. Every single player on this team is the best in the league, but I really do think he has the chance to contend for the best cornerback in football over the next 2 to 3 years in the league.
Yeah, I think you're definitely talking about a player who, after Ramsey kind of starts to decline, that will be in that conversation to kind of be that next torch carrier or torch bearer, I guess is the phrase. But uh, man, he was so good last year in the 2 games
Insane.
against the Chargers. He was just a dominant player. So if I'm a Broncos fan, I'm pretty excited about that. All right, we'll get you out of here on this. I think obviously the AFC West has so many question marks this year. Lots of moving parts. Chargers had a ton of free agent acquisitions, trades. Broncos, of course, have a new coaching staff, quarterback. Raiders have Devontae Adams, Chandler Jones. Chiefs moving off of Tyreek Hill, away from Tyrann Mathieu. How do you see the Broncos ultimately fitting in the AFC West? I know you're talking about wanting to see it first and foremost, and I think all of us are kind of feeling that same way. But give me kind of a ceiling and floor conversation about the Broncos in your opinion this year.
Man, the AFC West in general, it might just come down to who's the most healthy at the end of the year. I think on paper, you'd probably slot it Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders. In my opinion, I think that's how Vegas slots it as well. But again, if Russell Wilson, if they kind of things got stale there at the end between him and Pete Carroll and whatnot, and he reemerges himself as a top 5 quarterback, if the edge rushers can stay healthy, if Broncos' first-time defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero is not totally over his head as a defensive coordinator, you're talking about a team that probably contending for the AFC West. 12 wins. It's still a tough schedule, but that's I think the ceiling probably about 12. The floor, I'd probably put them at about 8 or 9, which is right around 500. Again, if we talked about 2 of these guys already, but if Russell Wilson misses time, throw it out the window. I mean, who knows what the hell the schedule looks like, the record looks like then. If Patrick Surtain goes down, he is the backbone of what the defense is going to look like this year in Denver. So if he goes down, I mean, you're talking about a defense that right now on paper looks probably about league average. I think Mike Clay had them ranked at 18th. If he goes down, you're talking about probably a bottom 10 defense. Unfortunately, just a lot of question marks there, especially with the young defensive coordinator. You don't see many of the super young guys get it right out of the bat with the defensive coordinator spot. So definitely a lot of question marks and probably one of the most volatile teams as far as ceiling and floor in the league this season.
Yeah, I think we all feel that same conversation, right? And I think, I don't know how Chiefs fans feel. We'll see in a next week when I interview one, but I think the rest of us, I feel like as good about our chances this year as any, while the Chiefs are kind of retooling a little bit. So I can't wait to see it. I'm so excited that training camp is officially starting tomorrow. And Nick, can't thank you enough for joining me tonight. Chargers fans, be sure to follow him for some great Broncos intel at Nick Kendell MHH on Twitter. You can check him out on the Mile High Huddle as well. Nick, thanks for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Go Broncos.